This is the 11th video in my Stormlight Archive recap, starting with the Way of Kings, and we're going to finish off Kaladin's POVs of Part 4 and then jump into Dalinar's POV for Part 4. So we left off with Kaladin convincing Adolin to get his men over that bridge into safety while he goes to help Dalinar, who is now fighting a shard bearer, and it's not going so well. So Dalinar pretty much thinks he's about to die, and then Kaladin swoops in and he pulls out, a classic move where he just rams his spear into the visor slit of the shard bearer, and they screech and go down. And then Dalinar comes to, and he wants to take out the shard bearer, but Kaladin's like, no, you're supposed to be one of the good ones. You're supposed to have honor. We need to go right now and get, people to safety. Dalinar tells Kaladin that he will protect Kaladin's bridgemen if they come back with him. Kaladin agrees, but he knows, Sadeas is not going to want to let them go. But Dalinar says, I'll take care of that. So they get back, and I'll go into more of the conversation in Dalinar's POV, but so far as what Kaladin hears, Dalinar says, I'll take these bridgemen, and, I'll pay you whatever you want. And Sadeas is like, nope, not for however much money in the world, you're not taking them. And Kaladin in his mind is like, well, there goes another Light Eyes promise, down the drain. And then Dalinar whips out his shard blade, pops it into the ground, and he says, take this. And everybody is stunned, including Kaladin. This is unheard of. And, Dalinar says, for every single bridgeman you have, take my, shard blade, and I'll take the bridgeman. And Sadeas takes the deal. Kaladin is rightfully stunned, and he has this little conversation I want to mention with Dalinar. And Dalinar says, what is the price of a man's life? And Kaladin says, priceless. And Dalinar says, well, that is coincidentally the exact cost or value of a shard blade. So he traded one priceless thing for 2,600 priceless lives. And with that, we'll move on to Dalinar's POVs of Part 4. So we opened Dalinar's POV with Adolin trying to convince him not to step down, that that's not what he wanted. But Dalinar's fairly set on it if, his mind is not his own. And then right on cue, we go into another vision. Now, in this vision, he is at a place he discovers is called Feverstone Keep, and he's looking out across a battlement, and these radiants start showing up, 300 radiants. Long story short, they all drive their blades into the ground, and they start walking away. Their blades and their shards fall to the ground, and they just abandon them. And Dalinar thinks, this is the event that they call the Recreants. When the shard bearers, the radiants, supposedly turn their back on mankind. And that voice that always speaks to him, that he assumes is the Almighty, tells him, the night of sorrows, the desolation, the everstorm comes, read the book and unite them. Renarin makes a suggestion that they should try and research some of these things that Dalinar is seeing to see if maybe they could be true. He has a name, Feverstone Keep. They're going to do some research, and he decides to bring Navani into the fold for that. Now, Navani tries to put her moves on him again, and he's just like, this damn woman. He cannot right now. So it's a little tense, and he sends her away. When we're at the next King's Feast, Wit, who Dalinar now learns is Hoid, tells him that the winds are shifting and Sadeas has something planned. Dalinar cuts straight to Sadeas and the king and asks him outright how his investigation is going. In long story short, Sadeas says somebody did try to kill the king, but it definitely wasn't Dalinar. And this stuns Dalinar and Adolin, and makes, them trust him more. And Dalinar convinces Sadeas to go on a joint plateau assault with him. During the plateau assault that they do together, the Parshendi also bring a second army, but Dalinar and Sadeas are successful, although it does get dicey, and Dalinar has to wade into danger and risk his own life to save Sadeas' life. And we're just going to say that we know from Kaladin's POV that favor is not returned in the future. Dalinar agrees not to abdicate for now, as long as there is a document in place that says Adolin can depose him if the need arises. And then also Dalinar does agree to try out Sadeas' bridges, just not during the final assault. Dalinar has another vision. He's in this great room surrounded by pillars, but outside it's the aftermath of some horrible battle. We know it's another desolation. And the man he's talking to, it turns out, is Nohadin. I don't know how to say it, but basically the author of The Way of Kings. But what's funny is, they're talking, apparently Dalinar is his advisor in this scenario, and he tells him, you should write a book. And he's like, that is a fantastically stupid idea. And Dalinar realizes the man he's been idolizing at this point in time is not the same man who wrote this book. And then Dalinar is, talking more, and when he comes out of the vision, he repeats a phrase, and it turns out that Navani recognizes that he isn't just speaking gibberish, he's speaking a different language. And they realize at this point his visions are not fake or delusions, they are definitely coming from something real. And then we get a little Sanderson steam here, because he and Navani kiss. They're talking. He is, not going for her advances again. She starts crying, and then he kisses her a lot. And this is not something you can undo. And then they're talking, and he admits he was going to court her, but then Gavilar showed interest, and he backed off, as he did with everything when it came to Gavilar. He doesn't say it out loud, but we know he actually contemplated killing his brother to be with Navani, and that is what made him swear to himself that he would not take a position of that much power because of what it could do to him. I'm also not sure if I mentioned this before, but whenever Dalinar's late wife is mentioned, he just hears like shh. He can't hear her name. He had it wiped, and we get the impression that it had something to do with the Night Watcher. But it's kind of funny because Navani's like, "Oh, she was perfect for you. She just wasn't very bright." And then comes the plateau assault at the tower. And we know how this ends based on Kaladin's POV, but from Dalinar's, right before they're about to go, Sadeas, convinces him to bring all 8,000 of his fighters. Sadeas is bringing 7,000. And Dalinar is convinced to do a strategy where they're going to like surround the Parshendi forces. And so they go out there. It is going well. The gem heart hasn't been taken yet. Dalinar lets out the Blackthorn, and he's killing up a storm. He does have another moment where the thrill, stutters for him, and thankfully Adolin shows up. He saves his ass, but then he's like, what are we doing about that? And we look over, and there's a second Parshendi army, and we look over, and Sadeas is retreating. Adolin and Dalinar are fighting for their lives, and this is a big "I told you so" from Adolin. Sadeas is a rat bastard is what Adolin's been saying this entire time, and Dalinar's like, I know, you're right. Adolin and Dalinar are assuming they're going to die, but they're going to go down swinging, and Dalinar gives a speech to his men, which I will say now. He says, "We fight here because we understand. The end is the same. It is the path that separates men. When we taste that end, we will do so with our heads held high, eyes to the sun." All hope is lost, and they look over and they're like, what the hell is that? It's the bridge crew. Dalinar gets his forces to push towards Kaladin. He convinces Adolin to send his men to help. And then the Parshendi Shardbearer shows up. And Dalinar's like, really? Now? And she says to him, "It is you. I have found you at last." We know how the rest of this goes. Kaladin saves his life, and then they get their forces back off of the plateau. What we learn from Dalinar's POV is that Navani is told by Sadeas that they're dead. And so in, emotional rage, she goes and writes this giant glyph on the ground for him, like a farewell, prayer, and it says "Justice." Of Dalinar's 8,000 forces, we learn that 2,643 are all that remain. When they get back, Renarin's super excited, Sadeas is not. And Dalinar makes his men not take out their weapons, do not provoke Sadeas. They cannot have a war start here. When Navani runs up to him, he embraces her. He is done letting people who are going to backstab him dictate how he should live his life. Good for him. Dalinar walks up to Sadeas and he says, "I have to know why." And Sadeas says it's because of his oath, and that he just does not think Dalinar is capable of doing what needs to be done. And he also learned that he can do what they've been doing together just by splitting his own forces in half. And then Dalinar tells him, "Well, I did learn one thing. It's that you think I'm still a threat." And then Dalinar basically goes and gives Elhokar a spanking. He beats his ass and then basically tells him, "If I wanted you dead, I would have killed you by now. So here's what we're going to do now. You're going to name me High Prince of War tomorrow. I'm going to take over all the forces and decide, how we do these plateau runs. And I'm going to enforce the codes in the whole camp. And by the way, I'm fucking your mom." All right, he says he's courting his mom, but still. And then he tells him, "I was trying to be Nahaden the peacemaker, but I'm not. I'm the Blackthorn, a general and a warlord." And there we go.